Hello, lovelies. I've said it before and I will say it again. One of the best parts about being both Canadian and American is that I get to celebrate not one, but 2 Thanksgivings. And since US Thanksgiving is right around the corner, I thought it would be fun to share my foolproof Thanksgiving spread that I put together for less than $75. This menu feeds between 8 and 10 guests, so you really do get your money's worth. And once you're done watching all of this deliciousness, be sure to head over to my website for the full shopping list, which you can print and take to the grocery store with you. Now that is something to be thankful for. Of course, as with most Thanksgiving feasts, this one all starts with a turkey. I have a turkey here that is about 12 pounds. The general rule of thumb is between 1 and 1.5 pounds of turkey per person that you're serving. Always 1.5 pounds if you're hoping to have some leftovers. I bought a frozen turkey instead of a fresh turkey. Frozen turkeys are traditionally a little more affordable. If you're using a frozen turkey, it's really important to get it out of the freezer and into the refrigerator 2 to 3 days before Thanksgiving. It really does take that long to thaw out. You never want to get to Thanksgiving Day and discover that you haven't thawed your turkey and you have to cook it from frozen. It is bad news. Now, as you can see, to prep my bird, I have simply bent the wings back behind its body to create sort of this position, and I've also trussed the legs just to hold them together. Of course, there are lots of different ways you can season up your turkey, but I'm keeping things really simple with this menu. Just a little brush of salted butter with a pastry brush all over, and it's as simple as that. You'll also notice I am leaving my stuffing outside of my turkey. That's because stuffing your turkey actually adds to the cooking time. Leaving it unstuffed means it will cook a little more quickly. Not to worry though, there will still be plenty of stuffing to go around. We'll get to that in just a second. Now that our turkey is completely buttered, the last step before we get it into the oven will be just tenting it with foil. I've gone ahead and buttered the underside of my foil to prevent it from sticking to the skin of my turkey. There's nothing worse than going to remove your foil during the cooking process and discovering that it's sticking to the skin and part of the skin comes off. Let's be honest, the skin is half the reason people show up to dinner in the first place. Now that my turkey is foiled, I'm going to pop it into my preheated oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for between 1.5 and 2 hours. At that point, I'm going to remove my turkey from the oven, give it a quick baste with a little more salted butter, and allow it to cook for the rest of the time uncovered so it gets a nice, dark, golden skin. For a turkey of this size, you're typically looking at a cook time of between 3.5 to 4 hours, but the only safe way to know your turkey is completely cooked through is with a meat thermometer. It should register 165 degrees in the breast before it comes out of the oven. Then you'll just want to tent it and let it rest for another 15 minutes before carving it. You don't want to carve it immediately. You really need to give it that resting time to let all those juices incorporate. Now that we're done with all that turkey talk, we can turn our attention to our stuffing. As far as I'm concerned, the best part of any Thanksgiving feast. If you've been eating store-bought stuffing all of your life, you are in for a real treat because there is nothing quite like homemade. Of course, I will admit it is a little more expensive than store-bought stuffing, but worth each and every penny. I have a nice big skillet on the stove and I'm just gonna heat it up over medium-high. To that, I am going to add some butter. I'll just let you know, butter is sort of a theme in today's video, so if you are not into butter, you can swap in some margarine or a little bit of oil, but butter really does make everything better when it comes to a Thanksgiving feast. Once it's melted, I'm going to go ahead and add some onion and some celery. I have really finely diced both my onion and my celery because you don't want big chunks of either. You want everything to sort of disappear into your stuffing. I'm gonna let those cook away for between 5 and 6 minutes. You'll see the celery will turn nice and bright green. Things will start to smell amazing. And that means it is time to add the rest of your amazing flavor to this. First up, of course, we've got some garlic headed in here. And then I've got some gorgeous fresh herbs. I've got some chopped fresh parsley headed in here, some sage, which is very, very classic in stuffing. And finally, some fresh thyme leaves. Beautiful herbaceous flavor and aroma. Now, if you're new to cooking with fresh herbs, I always recommend them. But if you're looking for a slightly more affordable alternative, you can also opt for some dried herbs. You want to cut all of your volumes in half though, because dried herbs pack quite a bit more punch than a fresh herb. We'll let all this yumminess cook up, stirring it constantly for another 1 to 2 minutes. Then we're going to go ahead and add our broth to this. Now I'm using chicken broth today, but if you have any vegetarian guests joining you for dinner, this is the perfect place to swap in some vegetable broth. You will make some vegetarians very, very happy. It's also another great reason to not put your stuffing in your turkey. Then the vegetarians can enjoy it too. We'll season this up with some salt and some pepper. And then once my broth mixture is boiling, I'm going to reduce my heat to medium and let it cook away. And then after about 10 minutes of simmering, your nose will be rewarded because your whole kitchen is going to smell delicious. We can turn our heat off completely and pile in our bread. Today, I'm using just a loaf of white sandwich bread that I cut into cubes and left out overnight to allow it to dry out completely. It's super important that your bread be really dry when it goes into your pan so that it can absorb all of that tasty flavor. If you use bread that's too moist, you'll end up with really soggy stuffing. Now, if you don't want to deal with this step, most bakeries actually sell dry bread cubes like this for use as croutons. It's a great option, and usually you can buy an entire bag of those bread cubes for only about $2. Either way, you just want to make sure your stuffing is well mixed, and as soon as it's absorbed all of that tasty liquid, you can transfer it to a serving dish, cover it in some foil, and then we can reheat it in the oven for about 30 minutes right before serving. I feel like we've already won Thanksgiving. So we've got our turkey, we've got our stuffing. Now it's time to talk about our cranberry sauce. And if you have been eating that gelatinous canned stuff your whole life, I'm about to share something that's going to change your life. Homemade cranberry sauce. 4 ingredients, could not be simpler to make, and honestly, the flavor is so much better. This, of course, all starts with some cranberries. You can usually find fresh cranberries in abundance this time of year in your produce section. If you can't find them fresh, not to worry at all, you can also use frozen as well. Because my cranberries are really tart, we want to offset some of that sour with some sweetness. So to that, I'm going to add some granulated sugar and a little bit of salt. I'm going to finish this off with the zest and juice of 1 large orange, a perfectly complementary pair. Once our juice and our zest are both in our pot, we can go ahead and give this a quick stir and just let it simmer away until the magic happens. In just a couple short minutes, here is what you have. This gorgeous cranberry sauce, still nice and thick and chunky. You have the option with cranberry sauce to go in with a potato masher and make it really fine. You could even go through with an immersion blender if you want it super smooth. I like leaving mine nice and rustic and chunky, just like this. Ruby red deliciousness. Come on guys, I cranberry wait. For my sides this year, I am starting with my maple glazed carrots. So I've got a nice big skillet on my stove. To that, I am going to add some butter. Once my butter is nice and melted, I'm going to add my carrots. As you can see, I've really thinly sliced my carrots. That's important because that's going to help your carrots cook up a little more quickly and get nice and tender. To help infuse these carrots with even more great flavor, I have got a couple cloves of garlic headed in here. I'll just stir those around, get everything nice and buttered up. And then I will pop a lid on and let these cook away for between 6 and 8 minutes. We want to let our carrots get nice and tender. I'll remove my lid at this point and just stir in some maple syrup. If you can't find maple syrup or you find it unaffordable, you can always opt in some honey instead. Both will work really well in this recipe. And I will also add some fresh thyme leaves to this. I'm going to season it with some salt and some pepper, keeping it really simple, and then stir it all around and let it cook away for another 4 minutes or so. You want to make sure your carrots are nice and soft and that maple syrup sort of reduces down and everything becomes nicely glazed, super shimmery and delicious, really, really sweet and beautiful. Trust me, no one is going to say no to this side dish. Next, because we could all use more greens in our life, I am making my green beans almondine, which is basically some green beans tossed in some brown butter, some almonds, and some shallots. Again, lots of flavor, very little fuss. I'm gonna start by quickly blanching my green beans in a pot of boiling water. We only want to let them cook for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The goal is to get them to turn nice and bright green and just a touch tender. And then you can transfer your cooked green beans right into an ice bath. This is important because it's a great way to stop the cooking and keep your beans nice and bright green, as opposed to letting them go that mushy brownish color that is just not appetizing. Once they've cooled completely in that ice bath, you can simply drain them out and set them aside while you get to work on melting even more delicious butter. Yes, if you can believe it, there's more butter in this recipe. Again, I'm melting my butter in my skillet, and once it's nice and melted, I am going to add some slivered almonds to this. It's important when you're doing this to use raw almonds because we're going to be cooking them. If they're already roasted, they have a higher chance of burning. I'm going to let my almonds cook for between 3 and 4 minutes until that butter starts to brown and the almonds start to get nice and crisp and golden, which means I'm going to get my shallots into the pan. The shallots will only take a couple seconds to cook up, and then we can finish this off by tossing in our amazing green beans. Now the thing about brown butter is that it takes on this incredible nutty flavor that is totally irresistible, and we're just going to use it to coat these green beans in all of that deliciousness. We'll hit them quickly with salt and pepper, and then they are ready to serve. You can transfer these to a serving dish, and all you'll need to do is reheat them really quickly just before dinner. Our next recipe is our mashed potatoes. Kind of one of the best parts of Thanksgiving dinner as far as I'm concerned, and also one of the easiest and most affordable. When it comes to making mashed potatoes, I think the best potatoes for the job are either russets or Yukon Gold potatoes. Today, I'm using russets. Another great tip for getting perfect mashed potatoes each and every time is starting with cold water and cold potatoes. If you put your potatoes in hot water, they'll cook too quickly on the outside without fully getting cooked on the inside, and you'll end up with lumpy mashed potatoes. Not on my Thanksgiving table. I'll bring those potatoes to a boil, and then I'm just going to let them cook away, undisturbed, for between 30 and 45 minutes. There is no such thing as overcooking your potatoes. You want them to be really, really soft and falling apart, because that is going to make them way easier to mash. Once my potatoes are completely cooked, I'm going to drain them in a colander and get to work on just heating up my butter and my milk mixture. Now, one of the easiest ways to fail at mashed potato making is to stir cold milk and butter into hot potatoes. A travesty, really, because all you're doing is bringing down the temperature of your potatoes and creating the perfect storm for gluey, unsavory mashed potatoes. I like to do this in just a small saucepan on the stove. You wanna make sure that you are only heating them over medium-low heat and that you remove them from the heat as soon as that milk starts to simmer away. You obviously don't wanna scald your milk. That is not delicious. We're almost there, team. This fancy-dancy tool is called a ricer. As you can see, mine looks like it has been through some stuff. And that's because it was actually gifted to me by my husband's aunt. It's probably older than I am, but I love it. Potato ricers are the secret to truly epic mashed potatoes. If you don't have one, I do recommend investing in one. They're not very expensive, but they're totally worth their weight in gold, because watch what they do to your potatoes. How amazing is that? Once all of your potatoes are riced, it's just a matter of adding our warm milk and butter mixture to the potatoes, seasoning them with salt and pepper, and then giving them a quick mash. Easy breezy, right? Now, of course, there are a lot of ways to season up your potatoes beyond just the traditional mash, but as I said, I'm keeping things simple. I'm just going to top them with a little more butter, if you can believe it, and some freshly chopped chives, and there you go. They are ready to be enjoyed. Smothered in gravy, of course. Speaking of gravy, it's just about that time. We are going to get our gravy on, and I'm gonna show you the simplest way to do it. It all starts with a saucepan on the stove heating up over medium heat. To that, I am once again going to add some butter. Once my butter is melted, I am going to add my flour into this mixture. We're using equal parts butter and flour to make something we call a roux. And a roux is basically a fancy French term for a thickening agent. And this mixture is going to be what thickens up our gravy. You'll want to make sure you're whisking this mixture constantly because, of course, both butter and flour love to burn, and you don't want to ruin it. Your roux, got it? As soon as your roux is a nice golden color, you know it's time to add your broth. You'll want to keep whisking thoroughly while you're adding your broth, and you'll see after just 1 or 2 minutes, things will start to thicken up beautifully, and what you'll end up with is gravy. I like to season mine simply with some salt, some pepper, and a little bit of fresh thyme, and as soon as my turkey comes out of the oven, I am also going to whisk in all of those delicious drippings that have accumulated at the bottom of my turkey roaster. And then your gravy is ready to be poured over all the things. Now at this point, your potatoes are mashed, your gravy is ready, your turkey is probably resting away, waiting to be carved, and that means you have time for one more quick and easy recipe. And trust me, this is not one you want to skip. We are making some easy homemade biscuits to go with all of this dinner deliciousness. And we're gonna make it really, really easy on ourselves by using our food processor to mix up our dough, as opposed to doing it by hand. Trust me, it is totally worth doing it this way. I am starting with some flour, some baking powder, some sugar, and a little sprinkle of salt. I'll give all of that a quick mix to make sure it's well combined, and then I am going to add my butter to my food processor. Now you may or may not know this, depending on how many biscuits you've made in your life. The colder your butter, the better your biscuits are going to be. So you really want your butter to be chilled straight from the fridge when it goes into your food processor. I'm just going to pulse it maybe 4 or 5 times, and that's really all it takes to get it nice and incorporated. Then my final step will be adding my milk. I'm adding buttermilk, which is super classic in biscuits, but of course you could use whole milk in this recipe as well. I'm just going to let it mix away while I add the milk until it forms this really easy dough. Guys, I almost don't believe how easy this was. Now that our dough is formed, we're just going to use an ice cream scoop and basically drop them onto a parchment-lined baking sheet. That's actually why these are called drop biscuits. Just drop them on and then get them into a preheated oven at 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes or until they're nice and golden and cooked through, and dinner is ready. You and your family are ready to dig in. Something that took hours to prepare will ultimately be gone in like 15 or 20 minutes, but you'll have a lot of satisfied people around your table, I can promise you that. And as far as I'm concerned, the best part about cooking Thanksgiving dinner is that you get to skip the dishes. Guys, I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. I have so much to be grateful for this year, and one of those things is all of you. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll give these ideas a try. If you do, as always, tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo. I love seeing your kitchen creations, especially your Thanksgiving ones. All the recipes are linked in the description box below. You can find them there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from. Happy Thanksgiving!